Hey, everyone! Today, I'll teach you how to make a digital stopwatch using JavaScript. It's a cool project, and it's easy to do. Let's get started. First, open your HTML document. We're going to create a box for our stopwatch using a div tag. You can name it anything you like. I'll call it container. Inside this container, add another div with an ID called display. This will be the main screen, showing 4 pairs of zeros for hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. Next, we need 3 buttons to control the stopwatch. To do this, create another div with an ID of buttons. All the control buttons will be in this section. Let's start by making the first button, which is used to start the stopwatch. Set an ID equal to the startBTN short name for the button. After that, when someone clicks on this button, it makes the start function happen. Now, duplicate this button by copying and pasting it below. Change the text on the new button to stop because it's going to be the stop button. Call its ID stopBTN and change the onClick event to make it trigger the stop function. Copy the same line once more. This button will reset the stopwatch. Name its ID as resetBTN and set the onClick event to make the reset function occur. Our HTML for the stopwatch is ready. Let's make our stopwatch look nice using CSS. To do this, go to the CSS file. Here, we can write our CSS instructions. First, select the body of the web page. Set the display to flex. Align items to center. Justify content to center. Height to 100 VH. And margin to 0. This small piece of code will make our stopwatch appear in the center of the page. Next, let's set the overall background color of the page using the background property. I want to create a gradient with 2 colors, and you can do this by using linear gradient. Set the angle to 135 degrees and choose 2 colors of your choice. Now, select the container with the ID. Set the display to flex. Flex direction to column. Align items to center. You see that the display text and buttons are all placed in the middle. And add a padding of 50 pixels from all sides. Border radius to 10 pixels. And background color. This will give our stopwatch a nice layout. Okay, now let's make the initial text look good. Choose it by using the display property. Set the font size to 5 rem. Font family to System UI. For backup font sans serif. Make it bold using font weight property. And set the color to white. Also, add a margin of 35 pixels at the bottom. Moving on to styling the buttons, select them by their ID, buttons, and the button tag. This includes all of them. Set the font size to 1.5 rem. Make it bold. Add padding of 10 pixels on the top and bottom, and 20 pixels on the left and right. Apply a margin of 5 pixels from all sides. Remove the border, and make the corners slightly rounded, border radius, 5 pixels. And change the cursor to a pointer. Set the text color to white. Now, give each button a different color. Start with the Start button. Let's make the Start button light green. Copy this code and, for the Start button with the ID startBTN, add a hover pseudoclass. Change the color to dark green when someone hovers over it. When I move my mouse over the Start button, you'll notice its color changing. Now, moving on to the Stop button. Give it a light red color. Again, paste the same code for the Stop button. For hover effect, make its color dark red. Lastly, style the Reset button. Choose it by the ID resetBTN and give it a light blue color. Use the same code and change the name to resetBTN. When someone hovers over the Reset button, change its color to dark blue. You'll notice that when you hover over any button, the color will change quickly. Let's make it smooth. To make the color change smooth on hovering, go to the button and add a transition effect on the background color with a duration of 0.5 seconds in ease function. Our CSS code is completed. Alright, let's write some JavaScript code. Open the JavaScript file. First, create a constant variable called display. Set it equal to document.getElementById, using the ID of the initial text holder, which is display. Now, make another variable using letNameTimer. Initially, set it to null. This timer variable is like a container that will hold the ID of the setInterval function, helping us keep track of starting and stopping the stopwatch. Create one more variable named startTime and set it equal to 0. Also, make another variable called elapsedTime and set it equal to 0. Finally, create a variable named isRunning and set it to false. If the stopwatch is currently running, we'll change this to true. If the stopwatch is not running, it will be set to false. In HTML, let's figure out what functions we need to make. There are 3: start, stop, and reset. So, we'll create these 3 functions. Come back to the JavaScript file. Let's begin with the start function. Inside the start function, I'll use an if statement to check if our stopwatch is not currently running. If it's not running, then we start the stopwatch. To do this, we set the start time. The start time will be the current date, obtained using date.now, which returns the current timestamp in milliseconds. We subtract the elapsed time, which is initially set to 0. To check the current time, I'll use the start time variable in the console log. Whenever I press the start button, it shows the time in milliseconds since 1970 on the console. It means our start function is working correctly. To move further, clear this line. In the next line, the timer is set to the setInterval method. We pass another function that we want to update every 10 milliseconds. This setInterval method will call the update function after every 10 milliseconds. When someone clicks the start button, indicating our stopwatch is running, the isRunning variable becomes true in this function. This completes our start function. We've passed the update function, so let's write the code for it. In this update function, first, create a variable called currentTime and set it equal to the date.now method. This currentTime variable now holds the current time. Now, calculate elapsed time. Set it equal to elapsed time can be calculated by subtracting start time from current time. When the start button is pressed, current time minus the original time is stored in the elapsed time variable. However, this time is in milliseconds. To make it readable, we need to convert the elapsed time into hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. Let's start with hours. Set hours equal to the elapsed time divided by 1000 milliseconds, multiplied by 60 seconds, and then multiplied by 60 minutes. I don't want any decimal values with hours, so wrap this calculation in the math. Floor method. Now, let's do something similar with minutes. Copy this line of code and paste it below. Change hours to minutes. Keep the floor method the same. Take our elapsed time and divide it by 1000 milliseconds. Multiply by 60 seconds. And then apply modulo 60. The modulo 60 ensures the result stays within the range of 0 to 59, giving us the remaining minutes. In simpler terms, it calculates minutes and stores the result in the minutes variable. Now, we'll do the same for seconds. Change the name of variable to seconds. This time elapsed time divided by 1000. And apply modulo 60. Remove the brackets around 1000 modulo 60. Finally, we need a variable for milliseconds. Set it equal to math.floor and elapsed time modulo 1000. Since it's already in milliseconds, we're going to divide by 10 because we only want the first 2 digits. Now, let's change the display of the stopwatch using the variable display. Use display.textContent to easily update the display. Set it equal to a string with placeholders for hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. When I click the Start button, the stopwatch will start, but currently, single values are displaying. I want to add a leading 0 to each value. Let's start with hours. Set it equal to a string in parentheses, and write hours. And then use the pad start method. Pass two values here, 2 and the string 0. Now, copy this line and paste it below. Replace hours with minutes. Also, replace it in the string method. Again, use the same line of code. Change the hours to seconds. Also, change it here. One last time, paste the same line here. It is for milliseconds. Everything is looking good, but only the Start button is working. Let's write code for the Stop and Reset buttons. First, create a function named Stop. Inside this function, I'll use the same code that I wrote earlier. Remove the code inside this if statement. This if statement will check if our stopwatch is running. If it is, apply the clear interval method on the timer ID, which we got from the set interval. After that, set the elapsed time. The elapsed time equals the current date obtained using date. Now, minus the start time. The isRunning variable becomes false when we stop the watch. When I press the Start button, our stopwatch runs perfectly. However, the Stop button isn't working, and I believe I made a mistake. Let's figure it out. In the if condition, I accidentally left the exclamation mark. Just remove it. Now, if I press the Stop button, it works perfectly. Now, let's write code for the Reset button. Create a function named Reset. Inside the Reset function, use the clear interval method on the timer. When the Reset button is clicked, all the variables will reset to their initial values. Start time equal to 0, elapsed time equal to 0, and isRunning equal to false. One last thing, we need to update the display of our watch. Update it using display.textContent and set it equal to initial zeros. If I click the Start button, the stopwatch will start. If I click the Stop button, it will also work. If I click the Reset button, all the digits will reset to 0. If you find it helpful, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos.